Okay, so this is the presentation of the visual aspects or presentation aspects of the interface I'm developing. Let me go back all the way to the beginning of the slides. So I most likely have missed a few things on here, but I feel I've hit up most of the aspects on here. Now this application is designed to be a graphical user interface to edit JSON data for a WikiBuilder. Um, Data is really basic, nothing really going on there. Here's a light sketch of kind of what the interface is going to look like. I'm not sure if I should made this or not, but it gives a good idea of what I'm looking for. Now it's broken up into three main areas. You've got the toolbar at the top, or whatever you want to call it, the file menu. It contains your things like file, edit, view, navigation, build tools, just really basic menu options to try to navigate things. It may include a little bit more. There may be icons built underneath it for quick access and various different tools to try to help improve the navigation and accessibility of the GUI, but this is a rough draft and does the job good enough to show what's going on. On the left-hand side, it's got a file navigation menu. Now, this would actually, in an actual project, would be much larger. I can actually give an example here. This is IntelliJ, which is what this is kind of being modeled after. This has huge lists of various different files you can navigate through. It has drop-down menus where you can open and close this. The interface will have a similar thing where you can click some button and it will open it up, and then you can open up the submenu. Everything will be indented, but I'll talk about that some more here in a bit. The design also has a middle area, which will be where the main action is going to go on. It'll have various different components. I'm not going to be talking about the components in general, but some things to note is that you would have a little area here, which would be your main information. Then you would have an additional area over here with different information. In this context, I mean, I can't really read my own handwriting, but these would be replacement keys, which are used for keeping track of URL replacements in the document. You'd have a menu here. This menu would be collapsible to the side, so you'll be able to click an arrow and it'll disappear to the left or right, and then you can pull it back out. You also have this area in here, which will have your actual components. This is the display data. You'd have header objects, text objects. You can add these by hitting plus here. There'll be pluses between each row as well you can hit. These will be nice and, I want to say green, but I'm still working on the colors. Most likely the color will be bright enough that you'll be able to see it. Not too bright that it'll be obnoxious, but just enough that you know it's there and it doesn't go unseen. There'll also be red X's next to here. These will be red, not too bright, but enough that you know they're there, and be red colored so you don't accidentally hit them. There'll also be scrolling bars on each side, so that way you can navigate up and down, open these up and enlarge them and do various things. If you double click it, it should open up a window, so you got a really nice view of what's going on, and it'll also tell you in the corner here what type of object this is. In this case, it says text. This is header. It'll show you the data, but most likely when you go to use this, you'll double click and it'll open it up and it'll be easy to navigate. That's about it on here. Moving on. Now this, as I said, this is based on IntelliJ. IntelliJ is the primary tool that most of the people in the organization that's going to be using this software actually use. Now, not everybody who ends up using this will actually have used IntelliJ. Some people do use Eclipse, and some people will not be coders at all. A few of the people we currently have editing the wikis don't know coding whatsoever, so will never have exposure to this. But the ideal about modeling after this is something that a good majority of the users in the group will have familiarity with this. So when going to train them how to use the software, they'll go, oh wait, I've already seen this before. This menu's on the side. Here's the editing window. Here's our toolbar at the top. They'll see the tabs. And this is something that is shared between a lot of applications. Things like SourceTree do the same thing. Eclipse has the same style. NetBean has the same style. So maintaining that same standardization also helps. It's the same ideal of putting the X in the corner and the resize minimization in the corners is the standardization that people are familiar with. What else we got here? Yeah, that's pretty much it for that. So moving on to colors now. Colors are not the main focus. There will be a theming system implemented, so people will be able to change the colors in not only the option menu, but they'll be able to preload themes. In IntelliJ, for example, the colors that you're seeing in the background there, that is not the default color of the GUI. I believe it's actually a white GUI by default. But this is using what's called, I believe, the Dracula theme. That same ideal will be implemented into the interface at a later date, but the default GUI elements are going to be a dark visual color theme. The ideal behind this is to keep it simple. We don't want to really go overboard as the main goal of the software is to make it more efficient to edit JSON data. The ideal is not to create some flashy marketable application that could be sold, although at a later date it may be marketed, but that's probably never going to happen. But yeah, dark theme. Now, when the colors are implemented, they need to blend and be smooth together. We don't want to have these sharp differences between colors, especially when you're going from the editor to navigation. Now, the editor most likely is going to have a lower color to make it easier to read the text. The text most likely will be black, so they might go with like a light gray or something in the background. At this point, it doesn't really matter as much, as those will be tweaked and edited by somebody who actually implement the design and will go, well, that doesn't quite work, so we're going to edit the colors around. But the main ideal is to make them dark. One of the things about making them actually a dark color theme is it matches the rest of the software we do make, as well it lowers the eye strain. Dark colors with white text is not as bad. Putting white text on top of a dark color also makes the text pop out more, although that'll depend on how we implement that. The GUI shouldn't be distracting. Now, this is one of the things about not blending. If you don't blend it, it is distracting. People's eyes will keep shifting to the problem area, going like, those two colors don't quite match, or there seems to be a weird color shift here, and it'll keep distracting them, and it may actually prevent them from doing work. We don't want to change the user's emotion. Now, we don't want to say, actually, we want the users to actually kind of be calm when they're using the interface, but at the same time, if they don't work effectively calm, we don't want to modify their mood. We also don't want to implement colors that may actually cause people to be aggressive, as one of the things actually noted down here in the notes is when you use red colors, it actually makes a user more aggressive. When you use blue colors, it calms them down. So we want to avoid both of those situations, and we don't want to make the user more aggravated because, well, they're not going to be productive. They're going to get work done quickly, they're actually going to get through their workflow, but then they're going to make more mistakes. If they're calm, they're not going to work as fast, but they may make less mistakes. But we don't want to change either one of those, so no emotional change with the colors. Now, the layout I've already talked about a bit here. The ideal is to mirror existing softwares they're familiar with. We want everything in the GUI to be quick and easy to reach. We don't want to have to move the mouse much. We don't have to tab much. We don't have to do anything to get anywhere. Everything should be within a short couple-second gap, and everything should be 3 clicks away. I should only have to click three things to find anything in the GUI. This also comes with quick to find. Now, IntelliJ is actually a problem with this, and this actually has more to do with the file structure of the projects I'm working with IntelliJ than IntelliJ itself. If you go over here and say I move over to one of these files go down a huge list, and it makes finding things actually difficult. Want to try to avoid that best as possible in the interface design because everything needs to be quick to find. Search bars may be included with this. Hotkey combinations to open search bars may be added, but it may be advisable to put a search bar into the GUI design itself. That way users know that option is there and they can just go type in a couple words and boom, they find what they're looking for. Everything needs to be large. This is for vision impaired. Not only like somebody like me, I'm slightly vision impaired because I've got glasses, and sometimes if I take my glasses off, I won't be able to see a GUI well. To help improve this, GUI components need to be larger, text needs to be larger, everything needs to be resizable to fit with things, simple to read, user-friendly. And this is to promote everything and everything like that. Some more notable things is cascading menus need to be avoided. Cascading menus overall are just hard to use. No matter how you implement them, they just become a nuisance because you have to click a button, open the menu, move to the right, open another menu, move to the right again, and by the time you've done that, the menu might have closed on you, or you may have forgotten what you were trying to find in the first place. With menus as well, they need to be easier to read, so the text needs to be large. Icons need to be provided next to the menu items to make them easily visually recognizable so you don't have to read the text. Color highlighting may help improve this. Spacing on the menu items needs to be big enough that you can't mistakenly click things, especially for critically damaging options. If the option is damaging, it needs to almost be spaced far enough apart that no matter what you do, you can't mistakenly click it. You would have to intentionally click it. To also do with this, when we go to pick colors, visuals, icons, we need to keep visually impaired people in mind as well as colorblind people. So when colors are picked, that needs to be a thing as well because there are a few colored impaired users that do help out with these projects. Other than that, that's pretty much covering most of that. Fonts really don't matter. Most likely, whatever the default font in JavaFX, which is what we're going to actually implement this GUI in, the default is most likely what's going to be used. We may switch between a few different ones depending on it, but the ideal is it needs to be basic, which means it needs to be really simple to read and not be challenging whatsoever. It shouldn't be something fancy like doing cursive writing in a GUI. I mean, it would look amazing, but then you would have users stare at there going like, what is that squiggle? We don't want to run into that situation. Font needs to be large. This is also to promote readability. With large font, it needs to be resizable. So if somebody goes like, well, that font's too big, they can lower it down. But if they go, that font's too small, they can raise it up. This should be easy to do, but it should probably be in an option menu, not somewhere on the main GUIs. You're not going to really mess with it much. The short part on this is not actually directed at font. It's directed at the text. Any text implemented in the GUI needs to be short, quick to read. A single sentence or less needs to be what is implemented. Every icon of something needs to have text below it, but it needs to not have like the whole icon's life story. It needs to be something simple like this is the start button, this is the stop button. That way, if somebody's confused, that they don't know what the icons are, they can go like, oh, that's what that is. Some of these options for the icons, maybe you just hover over them. I believe I need to switch over this. For icons, everything should have an icon in some kind of way. Now, when it comes to icons, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be literally a colored letter that sits next to it that somebody goes, oh, that's the Y option because it has a green letter Y. The icons need to be flat. We don't want something overly detailed. We don't want something that pops out at you. It needs to be really basic, easy to understand. This is where it needs to be simplistic, minimum colors. Colors need to be set up so that way visually impaired users, once again, don't have to find anything difficult. And overall, just easy to work with, and or efficient to work with, since easy, I shouldn't be using that word. Additionally, icons should match the theme, and various other small details. Lastly, hotkeys. Now, the whole entire application needs to be accessible via the keyboard without a mouse. This is to promote efficiency of using it, as some users do prefer to hit tab to go between options or use hotkeys to switch between windows. It also helps with physically impaired users who have difficulties using mouses and various other things, or maybe just somebody doesn't have a mouse on their, like, say, keyboard. It also will help with other devices, say like tablets. Tablets are not mouse friendly. They don't have that. They have instead touchscreen options. All keys should be made so that way you don't have to stretch your hand across the keyboard. If you have to go from one side to the other with your hand, most users are not going to find that comfortable. People with large hands may be able to do it, but people with small hands won't be able to do it, especially for physically impaired users that may not be able to actually do that at all. All hotkeys should extend from Alt, Control, or Shift. Not a single hotkey should exist where you click a single button, because if somebody is sitting inside of a text editor, inside that, say like they're editing like the body of a message where they want to actually change something, then they don't want to be hitting like, say, the W key and all of a sudden they switch to some other menu and going like, what happened? Instead, it needs to be things like Alt W, Shift W, if possible, 2 combinations between the two. That way it's less likely to make a mistake and hit the key. All these options, of course, also need to be listed in menus, be easy to find, and as the user is working, possibly even prompt the user going like, hey, you can hit this hotkey instead of doing that. Hovering and tooltips would also be a great way to show that off as well. But that's the end of the presentation. Most likely I've missed a few things, but this should cover the basics at least.